You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. Something I've personally struggled with on my journey, and in many ways am still meeting myself in, is comparison. That very human urge to measure yourself, your growth, even your worth against everything and anything around you. I notice I sometimes get stuck in an observer mode that robs me of enjoying moments for what they are, and instead planning and predicting my next move almost like I'm an avatar in my own life. Instead of an embodied character living wholly is what takes over my mental space. Now, over the years, I've really massaged this habit, and while I find myself more and more present as I practice being present both with myself and others, the last couple of weeks have really illuminated this subject for me. And so in contemplating it and dissecting it, I wanted to bring it here to you. I'm realizing that comparison is a game of interpretation, and more specifically involves how we choose to interpret the people who are living with us in our surrounding environment and sphere. There will inevitably be people around us who possess qualities that we admire. Perhaps they're articulate, carefree, effortlessly creative, risk takers, authentically themselves. The kinds of qualities that might jog in us a wondering of what it must be like to be them, to have what they have, to receive what they receive. Every single person in this world comes equipped with the most beautiful gifts, quirks, qualities, almost like package edition Barbies with specs and features that make each and every single one special and uniquely themselves. But the issue is when we allow someone else's gifts to be evidence that we use to vote against ourselves, versus allowing those same gifts to be evidence of what's possible. I'm realizing that I no longer believe comparison is our natural state, but instead a byproduct of what happens when we understand the true purpose of someone else's gifts. Someone else's proficiency, knack, success at something is not proof of our own quote-unquote deficit. Someone else's beauty isn't proof that we ourselves aren't beautiful, and their success isn't proof that we are somehow behind. People are not measuring sticks. We're people, and we're each wonderfully, uniquely, and intentionally ourselves. Beauty exists precisely because we each represent something entirely different. We each have traits, qualities, attributes that make up the mosaic of humanity. But we often forget this. In my contemplation, I've wondered what would happen if we stopped using people as mirrors that reflect insecurity and instead allowed them to become windows into what's possible for us, for me and for you. Being able to fully recognize qualities in others, like a catalog. Perhaps we wouldn't know such qualities exist until we were able to see them dancing out in front of us. I want to invite you to think about the people you've admired throughout your life. What parts of them captivated you? Was it their courage, generosity, resilience, calm stillness? Perhaps it was the way they poured their heart into other people or the way they made difficult things feel meaningful. Well, what if those beautiful qualities were presented to you as what's possible? Admirable qualities, as well as any quality really, are transferable, meaning that you can embrace them if you choose to. You can try them on for size. You can become more courageous, compassionate, disciplined, or curious. So what if the things we admire most in others are meant for us to receive as an education rather than a competition? Instead of wondering why we're not like someone else, perhaps we can allow ourselves to consider what about them we admire in the first place, to consider the landscape of what made them confident, and to consider what kind of roadmap would instill that resonance into you. The truth is, when we see someone's confidence, for example, we don't know the story of how it came to be. Perhaps they've been practicing for decades through thousands of uncomfortable moments. Perhaps they said something in an unflattering way so many times that they finally taught themselves how to say it differently. It can feel so tempting to become discouraged in the face of someone else's qualities, but what if we allowed ourselves to become fascinated by the path that built it and recognize that we too can have exactly that? I remember when I first embarked into the land of spiritual wellness and entrepreneurship, I would immediately find myself feeling intimidated by everyone around me who was in some kind of business, and I assumed that their business must be more equipped than mine. I felt small in comparison. But by focusing on my progress point against theirs, dismissed my ability to consider how they came to be. If I allowed myself to, I could have learned something from how they think and make decisions, the kinds of habits they've embraced, the mistakes they've overcome, the reason they continued long after others may have quit. If you notice, inspiration is light years much more generous in comparison to comparison. Inspiration's the mechanism that quietly opens the doors that seem shut. So it's my wish for you that you no longer compare your beginnings to someone else's middle. Because we do this, we allow ourselves to compare the pages we're currently writing to the chapters that someone else spent years editing. It's almost like walking halfway into a movie and assuming that the main character was always this capable, but then not knowing the context that you missed in the scenes where they were confused or failing or awkward. There were countless moments before you walked into that theater that shaped who that character became in the moment you saw. Mastery has this funny way of hiding its origins. And what I mean by this is that the more natural something becomes, the more invisible the practice that led there is. While some people are born with extraordinary abilities, all gifts need stewardship and training. We convince ourselves of the illusion that things just fell into place for the people that we measure ourselves against. But potential has never been the finished product. Each of us can and should learn from each of us. I have come to love asking myself what beliefs, habits, perspectives, and repeated choices created an expression of humanity in someone else. And I have come to find that excellence and mastery leaves a trail and clues. It's the tool of admiration that transforms people from being our competitors into our professors, with every interaction being another opportunity to collect wisdom instead of evidence against ourselves. There's something I want to call out in this as well. It's important to remember that not every quality you admire is one that becomes a centerpiece of your own life. And what I mean by this is that there's a range of what you can learn from someone else's prowess. Let's say you notice someone who's wildly charismatic, but from that charisma, you recognize how to be more present. Or let's say you notice someone's an incredible athlete, but rather than needing to become an Olympian yourself, you notice the quality of consistency that's within them. There's no need for us to copy and paste someone else's way of expressing themselves or that particular quality. Instead, we can allow ourselves to notice the je ne sais quoi and then find the ingredient of that quality we want to integrate in ourselves. If, for example, I admire someone's ability to make people feel deeply seen, I don't need to automatically become a therapist. I can instead consider how the quality of making people feel so seen expresses through me. Maybe my expression could be in writing or listening from behind my eyes when someone chooses to share something with me about their life. When we become so captivated by someone else's expression, it can feel tempting to stop listening for our own. It's almost like a siren's call that sweeps us away and shipwrecks us off track. We choose to imitate instead of integrate, or copy instead of create. But the world doesn't need another version of the people you admire most. The world needs you. with your particular combination of experiences, insights, humor, tenderness, heartbreak, resilience, and perspective. Your contribution can't ever be replaced. It can simply remain undiscovered if you spend too much time trying to become someone other than yourself. No forest survives because every tree decides to become the tallest. It thrives because every living thing contributes according to its own nature. The moss never apologizes for not being an oak, and the river never compares itself to the mountain. The wildflowers don't spend their season wishing they produced apples. Each being participates in the wholeness precisely because it honors what it was created to be and become. And yet, somehow, we as humans, who are perhaps the most creative creatures on the planet, spend remarkable amounts of energy arguing with the shape of our own contribution. What if the people who inspire us were never meant to become our replacements, but were always meant to be our reminders? Reminders that courage is possible, reminders that creativity is possible, reminders that kindness is possible, reminders that leadership is too, that healing is, and that there are countless ways to live a beautiful life. So let's not allow ourselves to feel threatened by others' gifts, and let's unabashedly celebrate them, because every time someone does something extraordinary, they expand your understanding of what humanity can become. They are measures of your world in its excellence, enlarging it instead of shrinking it. I wonder what our relationships could look like if we approached people in this way, meeting them in the qualities you admire but don't yet feel you have, and then allowing yourself to become curious and to hone this kind of practice instead of immediately judging. Practice is remarkably democratic, even when extraordinary talents seem rationed. When we practice, we claim participation in our own lives, and we learn that the qualities that once lived outside of us begin to take root within. And somehow amongst this, we can also see that we've become a little more fully ourselves in the process. Upon meeting others in their excellence, the invitation here is to ask yourself, what quality is it that you're noticing? And then consider why it impacts you in the way that it does, considering how it may have come to be in them, and then allowing yourself to wonder how it might naturally want to express in you. You're in process, and it seems inspiration isn't a spotlight that shines on someone else's greatness, but a lantern that illuminates the path towards your own. I've come to believe every remarkable person you encounter is carrying a piece of the map that's meant to teach you and gift you something. One person teaches you courage, another teaches you softness, someone else teaches you discipline, another teaches you joy, someone teaches you forgiveness, and another capacity. You gather these lessons throughout your life, not to become a patchwork version of everyone you've ever admired, but to deepen your own unique personal expression. You too are worthy of admiration, and remember that it's your gifts that you give to them that radiates from the matrix of all that you've ever been and all you've ever invested in yourself. Until next time.